Hello everybody, this is Jay Frost, and welcome to How to Raise, the CA-free accredited series from the Philanthropy Mastermind series. We have 3 different programs, and this one is the one that people usually turn to when they're looking for not just credit in order to do their work in the field of fundraising, but also just to understand the principles of what works, not only classically, but also all the things that are really coming into play today as we are looking at so much change in the world of fundraising. And we have an excellent person to introduce a lot of the concepts, both that have worked over time as well as what's working at the moment and what will work for your campaign tomorrow. And I'll be introducing her to you in a moment. But before I do that, I want to welcome those who are live with us today to, of course, utilize 2 ways to be a part of the conversation, or at least to ask questions and get answers to your questions. And that is to, first of all, go into the chat and just say hello. It's a wonderful way to get to know one another. And of course, to be able to make comments throughout the presentation today. So if you are here with us live, please just go into the chat and say hello, maybe let us know which part of the country or the world that you're from, maybe which organization you're with. And in fact, our presenter may ask this question, but I'll go ahead and take the liberty of asking it. If you are in a campaign or not, that would be a very helpful thing to know, or planning a campaign, either of those 2 things. So do warm up that space. We would love to hear from you. And I can see right there, Amy is already, the person I'm about to introduce to you is already warming up that space. So please don't make her feel lonely. Say hello right there. We also have the Q&A, which is a great space to make sure that your questions are not missed by those of us who are moderating today. Jack is in the background and I'm here in the foreground. We will be looking at the Q&A throughout and make sure to provide those questions to our presenter so that they can be answered in turn. So please do use the Q&A as questions occur to you, and we'll make sure that those get to our presenter as well. Finally, last note is that this is being recorded. So if you're here with us live, stick around. It's the perfect place to be a part of the conversation, but it's also a way for you to share this content with your colleagues, and you'll be receiving an email with a link to this that is going to be posted to both the DonorSearch site as well as to the DonorSearch YouTube channel within the next 24 to 48 hours. So be on the lookout for it there, and you can share it once again with people who need to be in the know like you will be after you've attended today. Also, I want to make sure that you know that we usually do share the slide deck, but that's entirely up to the presenter, and I neglected to ask her if she'll be sharing it, but we'll find that out for you very soon as well. And the last note is that there is a little survey at the end. So that will take you no more than 30 seconds to fill out. Please do that so we'll know exactly what you want to see and hear from this series and the rest of what we do in the weeks and months ahead. And just go ahead and just take 30 seconds or more to fill that out as you depart the webinar today. Now, once again, this is all presented courtesy of our friends at DonorSearch, but we won't be talking about DonorSearch today unless our presenter chooses to mention them for some reason. It's not for any lack of affection or appreciation. You can learn all about them and all the work they do at DonorSearch.net, as well as see all of our content there, as I said, under the Resources tab or on their YouTube channel. I do want to make sure you know a little bit about the person that you'll have the privilege of hearing from today, and that's Amy Eisenstein. Amy is an ACFRE, which means she's one of the few people that hold the Advanced Certified Fundraising Executive status in the world. And not only that, but she, of course, has her own firm, which is Capital Campaign Pro. She has extensive capital campaign experience working with numerous clients to help them be empowered to do the kind of work they need to do internally in order to get the job done. She's done this with, again, numerous campaigns, numerous organizations. She has many books to her credit. I'll just mention 3: Major Gifts Fundraising for Small Shops, Raising More with Less, 50 Asks in 50 Weeks. She has a weekly blog. You can see a lot of her video content over the years posted to YouTube. I'm not going to read her bio because then she'd have no time to present. But what I will tell you is this: you are very fortunate to have her with you today, so make sure to store up those questions because she is one of the best people in the country, if not the world, to answer them. It's such a pleasure to welcome back Amy Eisenstein.
Oh, thanks, Jay. What a generous introduction. I really appreciate it. Well, listen, I'm happy actually to take questions throughout, especially if there's something in real time that I say that doesn't make sense, or I use jargon or speak too fast, whatever the case may be. Do feel free to put it in the chat or the Q&A box, and I'm happy to answer it as we go through the content. So today I'm really excited to be talking about getting ready for a campaign. I think it's such an important topic that any organization that's thinking about or planning for a campaign really needs to know. So we're going to go ahead and dive right in. And I'm going to start by giving you a checklist, a readiness checklist, because I know so many organizations come to me and say, Amy, how do we get ready for a campaign? What do we need to know? What do we need to do? And so this is where I thought, all right, let's just start with a checklist. And campaigns really start with a big vision. So let me just say at the outset, there's lots of different types of campaigns. And some organizations call their annual fund an annual campaign, and that's perfectly fine terminology. I'm talking about a multi-year, once in a while, bigger than you've ever done fundraising campaign that lasts, like I said, multiple years for a big project, a special vision that gets you and your organization to the next level of program or service. So this is not necessarily part of your annual fund. If you do a comprehensive campaign, it may include your annual fund. But we're talking about capital campaigns or comprehensive campaigns, capacity campaigns, whatever you want to call them. So they start with a big vision, often with a strategic planning process. And so when you and your board and your leadership team figure out, you know what, we want to do XYZ to get us closer to fulfilling our mission. Sometimes it includes a building, a new building, a building renovation, but not always. It could be a program expansion. It often includes an endowment component, so longevity, legacy giving, those types of things. So, what is the big vision and what are the objectives that are going to help you get there? And based on the big vision and the objectives, what do you need to do to accomplish the big vision or to get towards your goal? You are going to come up with what we call a working goal. So, how much do you need to raise? And that working goal, your draft goal for the campaign, should be tied directly to the objectives and the big vision. So if your organization is celebrating a 50th anniversary or a milestone anniversary, as often is the case when a campaign comes up, if you come to me and say, Amy, we want to do a campaign in honor of our 50th anniversary, so we want to raise $50 million. I'll say, what does $50 million get you? The goal doesn't have anything, it's random, right? If you're tying it to your anniversary number. So what's the vision for the next 10 or 20 years of your organization? What do you need to accomplish that? And what do those things cost? That's how you get your working goal. It's important that it's tied to the vision, the goal. And so then you'll want to make sure that you have board buy-in for that big vision, for the objectives, for the goal. We want to bring our boards along. And then it's probably time to hire a consultant or seriously consider hiring a consultant because, let me pause, because campaigns are once in a while. Most organizations do them once every 10 years or every 20 years or sometimes even longer. And because of the way campaigns work, most nonprofit leaders and board members have not been part of multiple campaigns from start to finish. And so you will need some expertise to help with strategy and planning and training and coaching and all sorts of things that a good campaign consultant brings to the table. So you do want to really look around your organization and say, do we have the expertise? Do we have the knowledge and the know-how on our team? Or do we need to look to an outside expert to help us raise 10 times, 20 times, more times what we've ever raised before, right? It's a little bit crazy to think, okay, we're going to try and raise 5 times or 10 times or 20 times what we normally raise, and we don't need any additional expertise or training or planning. And that's where campaign consultants come in. Okay. They are going to help you develop the strongest case for support that you can, and also I help you identify donors. We're going to talk about that. Look and evaluate and develop your staffing and systems as you head into a campaign and do a feasibility study. So these are some of the things that we're going to talk about in more detail, but I just wanted to give you, and if you want to go ahead and take a screenshot of this readiness checklist to help you get ready for a campaign. But what we're really going to focus on is 3 steps. One is pre-campaign planning. What's involved? What do you need to do? Some of those things in the checklist will fall into pre-campaign planning. And then step 2 is going to be engage your donors early and test your plans. That's actually the feasibility study. We're going to go into a little bit of detail about why that's important, what are the benefits, how they work. And then 3, we're going to talk about finalizing your campaign plans. So everything that needs to happen really before you start raising money and before you start asking for gifts. This is all part of getting ready for a capital campaign. And when organizations do this well, they succeed, right? They raise a multiplier of money more than they ever thought they could, more than they ever have before. So first, we're going to go ahead and look at a campaign timeline. Now, here at Capital Campaign Pro, we break campaigns down into 7 phases to make them more manageable, to help the board understand what's coming next. And there really is a method to the madness and a strategy to campaigns to make sure that you can raise more money than you've ever raised before. So we start here in pre-campaign planning. So we're going to go through these first 3 phases, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 in the next half hour or so. The quiet phase, phase 4, is where you actually start raising the money and raise 75, 85, or even 90% or 95% of the money that you need to get to your goal. That happens in the quiet phase here. We're not going to get to that, but that is before you kick off or go public. And so this is a really important concept, especially for board members or people on your leadership team that don't understand how campaigns work. I will tell you that almost every sort of failed or stalled campaign I've ever come across, it is in large part because they kick off and go public too early. They think, oh, we're at 30%, 40%, or, day 1, let's kick off and go public. Those are the organizations and the campaigns that really struggle to get to their goal. So it's super important that you do all of this planning and lead up to this very important quiet phase where you are going to raise 70, 80, or even 90% of your dollars before you kick off and go public. But here today, we're going to talk about these phases that lead up to the fundraising. So in pre-campaign planning, you're going to develop the project plan. Is there a building? Is there a renovation that's involved? What does program expansion look like? Or what do you need for your endowment? What kind of funds do you need? So these are the project plans. And the campaign objectives are what is going to, what specifically needs to happen to accomplish the vision, right? So if you want to end hunger in your county, do you need to expand your food bank? Do you need to have mobile food banks? What are the campaign objectives that are going to help you accomplish that vision over the next 10 or 20 years? And how much does that cost? That's the working goal or draft goal. Here in pre-campaign planning, before a feasibility study, you're going to probably hire a consultant to help you with that feasibility study. You're going to develop your case for support. And engage the board, provide some board training and bring them along. So that's what happens. We're going to just take a little bit more of a look at what happens in that first phase in pre-campaign planning. So it's really a very important opportunity to engage the board. And this, if you looked at the timeline, you might have seen that we put pre-campaign planning as anywhere from 3 to 12 months, sometimes longer. And over a period of time, you want to bring the board along in terms of their understanding and excitement for and preparation for a campaign, because you probably have board members that are fairly nervous, skeptical, anxious, right? They don't know if you can raise 10 times more than you normally raise, and they know that they maybe can't give a significant gift. So they're nervous. Are they going to be expected? How much are they going to be expected to give? What are they going to be expected to do? Are they going to need to ask their friends for money? So it's a really important piece of this pre-campaign planning so that every board member's excited, they have a better understanding of what will be expected of them, what their roles and responsibilities are. So this is an important opportunity to engage your board, and a consultant can play an important role in helping with that training and early board engagement. So this is the period of time where you plan the project and the campaign objectives. I talked about that, and determine your working goal. How much are you going to be raising or trying to raise? By the way, you will not announce an official campaign goal until you go public. And remember, that's not until you've raised 70, 80, or 90% of the dollars you need to get to your goal. So you're not going to put it on your website, a goal, a specific campaign goal, a dollar goal. You're not going to publish it in a brochure. You're not going to put it in a video until you go public. In the early phases of the campaign and all through the quiet phase, you are going to be working with a working goal or a draft goal. And you're going to tell all your donors in the quiet phase, this is our working goal. We're working towards this goal. And as we go along and learn more, and our campaign morphs and shifts and develops, and our plans and our project morph and shift and develop, and they will, we will land on an official campaign goal and announce it when it's appropriate. In this pre-campaign planning, like I said, you'll probably want to hire a consultant. I would recommend that you get referrals, that you do some research, that you interview 2, 3, or 4 consultants. And listen, if you're not sure if you need a consultant or you're not sure that you're going to hire one, go through the process of interviewing them anyways and see what they can do for you. And then you can decide either to hire one or not to hire one. But you're going to learn a ton from the interview process because you're going to say to consultants, this is the project. This is what we'd like to do. How would you help us? And let them teach you and your committee and your board all about campaigns and how they work and what they would offer. And then you can make a decision. And it's a great learning process, hiring a consultant. They're going to help you draft a case for support. And let me tell you that a case for support is a set of ideas. Let me say that again. A case for support, well, I'm going to say it in a different way. A case for support is not a brochure. Okay, write that down, everybody. A case for support is not a brochure. A case for support is a set of ideas, and you will use those ideas in various ways throughout your campaign. Maybe in the public phase, way down the road, you might turn it into a brochure. Honestly, today, 2025, 2026, you may do a whole campaign with no brochure. You may use those set of ideas in a slide deck, in a conversation with a donor, in an infographic, on your website, in a video. That case for support, the set of ideas of why this campaign is important and why donors should care, will be used in a variety of formats throughout your campaign. So it's really important to understand the concept. You will create a gift range chart. We'll look at one in a few minutes, or a table of gifts. In other words, how many gifts do you need at what levels to get to your goal? And develop a depth chart, which is really a table of donors, a listing of donors that corresponds to your gift range chart. If you're raising $10 million and you need one gift of a lead gift of $2.5 million and 2 gifts of $1 million each, who are the handful of donors, 5 to 10 names that could and might give you those $1 million plus gifts that you need to get to your goal. That's what's in the depth chart. So that's pre-campaign planning. So there's a ton of work to be done, in pre-campaign planning before you even do a feasibility study. All right, let me just pause for a second. Feel free to type in questions, comments. Happy to engage. But step 2 is engaging your donors early. This is super important and a step that you don't want to skip, because when you engage your donors early, they're more likely to participate in big ways and feel literally and figuratively invested and involved in the campaign. And, there's an old saying in fundraising, I'm sure ask for money, get advice, and ask for advice and get money. And this is the perfect opportunity. In fact, a unique opportunity to go to your donors early to get their advice, and you genuinely have something to ask their advice and get their feedback on and get them engaged with before you ask them for money. So don't skip this step. Okay, so this is the feasibility study, and I guarantee that some of you have board members or people on your leadership team that are saying, you know what, we need to do a campaign. So why would we do a feasibility study? We just need to go. Who has that going on at their organization? I guarantee some of you have board members, leadership team members saying, we know we're going to do the campaign, so let's just go. And I understand that the term feasibility study is probably alienating. So I wish we could call it something else, I should say. Um, I'd like to call it a campaign planning or readiness study. Nobody would skip it. So let's agree as a sector that we're going to rename feasibility studies and call it campaign planning or readiness studies. But whatever you call it, it's an opportunity to engage your lead donors, discuss the case for support and get their feedback, and assess their giving potential and your fundraising potential. So, I think a lot of people don't want to do feasibility studies because they don't want to learn that they can or can't raise the amount of money that they need for their project. But let's say you do a feasibility study and you test a $10 million goal, and it comes back that realistically you can probably raise 6.5 million, right? Like 10 million's out of reach. I'd rather make data-informed decisions as a board member. That doesn't mean we can't do the project. It means we need to consider alternative funding sources. It means we need to consider financing. We need to consider using organizational reserves if we have them. We need to consider going out to look for government grants or other sources of funding. But, just going ahead and saying we need to raise $10 million, so we'll do it, even if we don't have the donors or the data to back it up, to me is like a crazy thing to do with a project this big and this important. I want to know what the giving potential of my community is. And this is how we figure it out. And it engages our biggest potential donors early and gets their involvement and their feedback and their engagement and their participation. And it makes it much more likely that at the end of the day, they're going to give big. Okay, so where will the money come from? Everybody wants to know. And this is what we discover going through the process of preparing for a feasibility study. Now, the truth is that in probably every campaign I've ever worked on, which is hundreds at this point, through Capital Campaign Pro and from being a development director myself, more than 50% of the money will come from your top 20 donors. Whether your campaign is raising $1 million or $100 million, $10 million, or $200 million, this pattern repeats over and over and over, that more than half of the money comes from your top 20 donors. So let's take a look at a gift range chart or a gift table. So if you look at the top row here, we start with a leadership level gift. We need one gift for a campaign goal of, $1 million. I put just because it's simple and less zeros, but if your campaign is 10 million or 100 million, just add some more zeros. It works exactly the same. Oops, I didn't mean to do that. The lead gift should be around 25% of your campaign goal. Depending on your community, it might be a little higher or a little lower. Sometimes in a small community, like an independent school where there's 100 families, you may need a lead gift of 30%. Or in a cancer center, a children's cancer center, or an animal shelter where there's lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of donors in the community, you might be able to go down to 20% for your lead gift. But we like to start with approximately 25% of our campaign goal for our lead gift. So we need one gift of 250,000 to get to our goal. So here we need 20 gifts in the lead gift category. And in this example that I'm using, I'm having it get us to 70% of the goal, which is very common and very typical. And this is from 50 prospective donors. So 50 prospective donors lead to 20 gifts. Now, the 30 people that don't come in these lead gift categories come in this major gift category. So they'll come in down here. It's not that they don't give at all. They just give lower amounts, which is fine. It's sort of the waterfall effect. So this is a gift table. So the idea of a feasibility study is that you're going to be talking to these 50 prospects, or as many of them as you can, that will ultimately lead to the 20 gifts that get you to 50, 60, or 70% of your goal. This is the capital campaign formula. So don't worry about hundreds of donors or thousands of donors. Your job is to identify and focus on these top 50 prospects. These are your leadership level donors. This is who you're going to be talking to and focusing on through the quiet phase of your campaign, honestly. All right, so who's going to make those gifts? We use this little ABC acronym. If you've been in fundraising for a while, you may have heard it. A is the ability to give the kind of gift you're looking for. So in the example I just gave, we need a couple of donors who can give 100,000 or more, right? So the ability to give those kinds of gifts. So we don't need Oprah or Bill Gates, right? We don't need billionaires to make gifts of 10,000 to 100,000. There's lots of people in your community, whether you know it or not right now, that can give those gifts. They do have to believe in your mission and be passionate about your cause. So again, not Bill Gates, not Oprah. They don't know about your cause. They don't care about your cause, your organization. And they need to have contact with your organization, these people. So that means that if a board member calls or if the executive director emails, they will get back to you. Maybe not on the first call, maybe not the first email, but that they will get back to you. So individuals, foundations, corporations, people who are already giving to you, major donors in your community, and current and former board members, your biggest donors. So that's who are going to be these top 50 people. And sometimes it takes some work to figure out who they are, and that's fine. That's part of the campaign planning process. So I want to just tell you, a couple years back, we worked with an organization called Tabby's Place, and they really didn't know who these top 50 prospects were. And you know, they came to us and they didn't have a clue if they had these donors, who their donors might be. They had a whole bunch of regular, ongoing, loyal annual fund donors at very low levels. But with some research, after discussion, after some data mapping and data mining, we were able to figure out who their top 50 prospects were. And they went way over their original goal, raising significantly more than they ever imagined possible. So that is part of getting ready for a campaign and it is part of the hard work of the campaign, is figuring out who are these 50 people that are ultimately going to make or break your campaign. Okay, so 50 people, that's who we're looking for. That's sort of the magic of the pre-campaign process. So let me just give you some benefits of a feasibility study, because like I said, I know there are people at your organization that are questioning whether to do a feasibility study. In fact, they may be lobbying hard not to do one. And the truth is that they may have had a bad experience with a consultant in the past, or done a feasibility study that didn't really give them what they needed to know. And so they may think that you don't need to do one. But let me tell you why you should, and what a good feasibility study will do for you. So number one, it engages your prospective donors early. Like I said, it is a unique opportunity to go to your biggest potential donors and ask their advice on something legitimate and important. You say, this is the case we've outlined. These are the plans we have. Give me your feedback. What are your thoughts? Are you excited? Will you help? Will you participate? What are your concerns? So, we always talk about asking our donors for advice. This is an opportunity, a real legitimate opportunity to go to your donors and ask them their advice and engage them. It forces you to focus on the top 50 donors because you can't interview hundreds of people, certainly not thousands of people. This is not, a survey. This isn't focus groups. This is individual one-on-one interviews. So you organizations do, around 30, 40, 50 interviews, but you have to identify and focus on the right people to participate in your study. If you interview sort of whoever, right, all your board members and whoever your most active volunteers are, sort of, but the people that can't give those top 20 gifts, you will get extremely disappointing results because they can't possibly say they're going to give the biggest gifts. So it forces you to do the hard work of figuring out who could and might realistically give us the biggest gifts. Those are the people that we want to interview so that we can say with confidence how much we can realistically and aspirationally we can expect to raise. But we need to focus on the top donors. And the feasibility study, the benefit is that you're going to be able to make data-informed decisions, right? Is your goal within the ballpark of reason? Do you have a shot of getting there? Or, do you need to identify alternative funding sources, as I said, or, scale back your plans or phase them? The idea of putting a shovel in the ground for a $25 million renovation when you're only going to be able to raise $6 million is crazy. You have to have some sense of what you can realistically raise and how you'll fund the project before you plow ahead. So this also will clarify your strengths and weaknesses. Oops, sorry about that. I don't know. And provide outside perspective. So, like internally, your case for support may be amazing. You may be in love with it. You may think it's clear and crystal clear. And, if 4 or 5 people say, I don't understand this part, this is confusing, or the end resonates more than the beginning, it's an important thing to know that people resonate with your case or that your case resonates with people that are outside the inner circle of your organization that are very familiar with the project. So it's really important. And doing a feasibility study gives the board confidence. You're going to ask the board to vote to proceed with a campaign. And the truth is that most of your board members don't have a clue as to whether you can do this. How could they possibly know? They have no idea if you can be successful. But if 30 or 40 of your biggest potential donors say, yes, we're excited, we'll be involved, we'll contribute, we'll help, then your board can approve the campaign with confidence that you can be successful. So you want those 30 or 40 from that pool of 50 prospects. You want as many people as you can to interview that say, yes, we're excited, we'll help, we'll be involved, we'll participate, we'll give. And that gives the board confidence that you can succeed. So there's 2 ways to do a feasibility study. One is what I call the old model, and that's when a consultant interviews your donors confidentially. And some consultants still do this. And you know what? As a sector, we've been doing this model for decades, longer than decades. And it served its purpose. It was effective in sort of in the past to me. there's a new, better way, and many consultants are starting to turn towards this model. Certainly, it's the model we use and we've developed at Capital Campaign Pro. It's where we teach and guide your leaders to conduct the interviews. So the truth is that all steps of the process are the same as the old model, except the only difference, or the key difference, I should say, is who's in the room with your donors. So in the old model, the consultant's in the room with your donors, usually interviewing them in a confidential, sort of anonymous way, and they give you aggregated results, but you don't know exactly who said what. In this new model, the consultant's with you every step of the way, preparing you for the interviews, identifying who to interview, helping you develop that case for support, and training you and your leaders to conduct the interviews. And then, of course, the consultant analyzes the data and puts together recommendations for your board. But the benefits of this new model where you're in the room with your donors is that immediately, right from the jump, you're building donor relationships and cultivating them long in advance of asking them for money. The benefit is that these interviews are totally transparent. Now, consultants that still use the old model will tell you that donors are more open and honest with consultants than with nonprofit leaders. And when we started this model, this new model 8 years ago, I would have said, you know what? I actually don't know if donors are going to be open and honest with nonprofit leaders. We've always said that it's better to have the consultant do the interviews. In the past, we said, you know what? The donors will tell people, consultants, things that they won't tell nonprofit leaders. But we have now been doing this new model where we are not in the room with the donors, only nonprofit leaders are. We've been doing it for 8 years with over 100 organizations. And I can say with 100% confidence that donors love talking to nonprofit leaders much more than they do consultants. And they're happy to tell you whatever you want to know. They're happy to complain. They're happy to tell you the truth. If you're open to listening and ask good questions in the right way, donors are happy to open up to you. And if you think about it for a minute, that makes total sense. So the amazing part of this new model is that the consultant that you hire spends so much time training your team and getting you ready for these interviews that you as a team are so much more confident talking to your donors and much more prepared to ask down the line. So there's a ton of training involved. It builds the board confidence equally because you're still going to consult with your top donors. And this new model provides a natural path to solicitation because you're doing cultivation all the way back here in feasibility study planning. So anyways, I'm happy to answer any questions you have about that. What I will tell you is that we did this model maybe 5 or 6 years ago with Lakeshore Tech. And the executive director of the foundation was talking to one of her biggest potential donors in the feasibility study process. And the donor said, you know what, he wasn't going to give to the campaign because it really wasn't in line with his philanthropic priorities. And she was devastated because he was probably one of her lead prospective donors. But she asked him, she sort of had the wherewithal at the end of the conversation to ask him if she could keep in touch throughout the campaign. And she did every quarter. She reached out to him like clockwork and she gave him an update. She asked his advice. She consulted with him about what was happening in the campaign and with the project. And she even asked his advice about how to approach other donors in the community. And he was a real, leader, a philanthropist in the community. So he had his finger on the pulse of what was going on. And 2 years later, towards the end of her campaign, he came in with a $2 million gift, the biggest gift to the campaign, putting them over goal. And, in the feasibility study, he told her no. And if she had not continued to reach out and consult with him and stay in touch, of course, that gift would have never happened. And if she had sent a consultant in to do the interviews in the feasibility study, she would have never met this guy in the first place. And she knows that. And so this model of like having her just even get in the door when there's not an ask, that's how she got in the door, just to ask his advice, led to a transformational gift. And, does it 100% always happen like that? No, of course not. But it is totally amazing what these conversations can do in terms of building relationships with key donors in the community. So this was really an amazing campaign. All right, so we've talked about pre-campaign planning and engaging donors early during your feasibility study. And now we're going to just spend a couple more minutes talking about finalizing your campaign plans post feasibility study before you start asking for gifts. Okay, so in phase 3, in campaign planning, you are going to, this is an opportunity to adjust your campaign plans based on the information that you heard in the feasibility study. So if a number of donors or interviewees, I should say, prospective donors, were excited about something that you put on page 3, you have an opportunity to bring it up earlier in your case for support. Or if several people found something confusing or weren't excited or motivated by something, you can change it around. This is an opportunity to adjust your case for support. You may revise your working goal at this point. So I will tell you that just as often we raise the working goal after the feasibility study as we lower it. So you may think, oh my gosh, we're just going to hear that we can't raise the money. I will tell you that that's not true. Most often we actually test an amount that stays, the working goal stays. I think it's about 60% of the time, whatever goal we test, $10 million, $25 million, $50 million, like we find that's the right goal. And we're going to proceed with a campaign with that working goal that we tested in the feasibility study. But 20% of the time, we raise the goal as the result of the feasibility study, and 20% of the time, we scale back on the working goal. We finalize the case for support and we develop a campaign plan. So we're going to talk about what is in the campaign plan. So case for support, right? We may have revised it based on what we learned and heard in the feasibility study. Also, the gift range chart, right? We may change that working goal, which will impact the gift range chart. How many gifts do we need at what levels to get to our goal? The depth chart is a corresponding table of, or a listing of donors, of prospective donors at each level for each gift that we need in the gift range chart. So if we need one gift at $2 million, we want 2 or 3 prospective donors that we're going to cultivate and solicit for that lead gift. If we need, 4 gifts of $1 million each, we need 8 to 10 to 12 prospective donors for those $1 million gifts. So that's what the depth chart is. It's our pipeline of donors. We want to make sure we have it solid before we start heading into a campaign. We're going to develop campaign policies. What kind of gifts are we counting? When are we counting them? What gifts are we not accepting? Timeline, budget. We haven't really talked about budget, but you will want to create a budget for spending, investing on this campaign success. And we recommend generally starting with a budget of about 10% of your campaign goal. So if your campaign working goal is $10 million, you would start out with the idea of a $1 million campaign budget, which would in turn make your working goal actually $11 million, because of course you have to raise the budget. But you'd have $1 million to spend over 3 years of the campaign. So, um, the campaign budget is for the consultant and feasibility study. It's for donor recognition. It is for campaign events and activities, ribbon cuttings, celebrations, those kinds of things. It's for, I said donor recognition. Um, it's for a whole bunch of things that I can't think of off the top of my head, a video, campaign materials, those types of things. You're going to develop a donor recognition plan, and a communications plan. And that comprises of your campaign plan. So I'm going to pause in a minute for questions. I'm going to take the slides down in just a minute, but I do want to say that we do not want you to hit the brakes in uncertain times, whether it's economic uncertainty, political uncertainty, pandemics, whatever it is. What we find is that often in uncertain times, the need for your case or for your services is even stronger. Certainly, we're seeing that with food right now, right? Food banks, soup kitchens. It's these are uncertain times, and the need is even stronger. The case is even stronger. So don't pause your campaign. Donors are generous. They step up to the plate. We see this again and again and again during the pandemic, during the economic crash of 2008, on and on and on. We can cite examples of donors really stepping up to the plate in times of need and uncertain times. They want to make sure that things are good and that they can help right now during what lots of people are worried about, economic uncertainty. The rich are getting richer, and those are the people that are going to make those top 20 gifts. So don't think of your pocketbook and your wallet as a reflection of what other people can do. You don't know. Oops, sorry. Oh dear. Sorry. My slides are getting away from me. The economy fluctuates. You're going to plan a 3-year campaign. And historically, we know that recessions don't last for 3 years. So even if things are good or bad, the chances are that during the timeline of your campaign, the economy will go up and down, and that's fine. And sort of time kills all deals. Construction gets more expensive and people get more nervous and donors get sidetracked. So just go for it. If you've got a strong case for support and a big vision, an exciting project, go. What I will tell you is that, a lot of organizations were planning campaigns or in the middle of campaigns or starting campaigns in early 2020 when the pandemic started. The organizations that paused those campaigns, I'm still talking to 5 or 6 years later that they're struggling to start their campaign again. The organizations that were brave enough to say, let's just go, they're long finished. Okay, so we went through this readiness checklist, big vision, objectives, working goal, board buy-in, hire a consultant. I hope you'll consider us. Case for support, donors, staffing systems, and feasibility study. That's your readiness checklist. If you're planning a campaign between 3 and 130 million, let's talk. I hope you'll visit the capitalcampaignpro.com website. We've got tons and tons of free and paid resources for you. So, all right, good. It's Q&A time. So Jay, if there are any questions, I am happy to answer them now. And I hope that was helpful.
Well, I know it was. And Amy, thank you for all of that. And to give people a minute to post any questions. And you know what? If you have a question seriously about your campaign, we don't have to say your name. I know sometimes that may be a sensitivity. It also may be that you think that your question is not a great question. I guarantee you, because I've been through a number of campaigns myself, there is no dumb question when it comes to a campaign. So anything you want to ask, any kind of comment you want to make, now's the time to do it. And while you're thinking about any question that may be occurring to you, I just want to tell you what's coming up next in the series. So we have right now just dropped our podcast in the PM podcast series, which is Healthcare Philanthropy Leaders Speaking Out. And these are 6 of the top people in healthcare philanthropy who are also waging campaigns in a very uncertain healthcare philanthropy market because of all the things that have happened with the big, beautiful bill. So check that out. If you listen to podcasts, very interesting conversations about the current challenges and the opportunities for the future. Lots of great conversations with some of the leading voices in that field. You can get it wherever you get your podcasts. And then next week, of course, on Tuesday, we have our News and Views show, The Front Lines of Social Good. I'll have some interviews from here where I am in Chicago at the Giving Institute. So you'll hear about that, including what's going on in Chicago and how that may be influencing philanthropy. And then finally, next Thursday, we will have a conversation with, let me see, where is it? Brantley Boyette, who's the president at Giving Docs, talking about AI-powered fundraising, how artificial intelligence is transforming planned giving. Check all that out on the DonorSearch site. Now, Amy, I know that I had one question myself. You were going through this thing and went through the budget, and you were listing a number of items. And I wanted to ask you, when you think about a budget for a campaign, do you also potentially include additional staff? Because one thing I've run into is that they may not have all the people they need.
You know what? That is a huge one that I forgot to mention. Of course, additional staff is absolutely part of your campaign budget. And I will tell you that a lot of times people automatically think that means a major gift officer, and it doesn't. Actually, most frequently in the campaigns we're running, we see people hiring additional administrative support people so that they free up time for the executive director and the development director so that they can go out and be talking to donors more. So sort of it doesn't have to be a major gift officer. It can be someone that's supporting the executive director or the development director, maybe doing more data management, maybe doing more grant writing or taking over some of the event planning or other things that are happening in the development office. So absolutely that is included in the campaign budget. I'm so glad you asked that.
Well, I do have a
Yeah.
follow-up on that too, because I know that
Okay.
one of the models in the past with consulting firms, some still do this, some do not,
Yep.
is to say, well, we can give you, or if they request it, we'll give you a campaign director. And
Mm,
now that could have been highly effective, but it
yep.
also could be extraordinarily expensive because you're talking about campaign counsel costing a fair amount on a daily rate. And if you want them in there one day a week, it might be less, but if you have them there 5 days a week to run a campaign that runs you 2 years, that
Yep.
really starts to add up. So you've been busting the notions about campaigns for the last several years. How do you feel about hiring a staff member to serve in that role, even if the role might be a temporary one, versus having counsel provide that kind of support?
Yeah. I think it's always better to hire internally than to have a consultant play that role. Because if your campaign does well and your annual fund grows, which it should, which we can talk about also, um, it's an opportunity to add permanently to your development team. So you may hire them temporarily as a campaign manager or a campaign director, but if the campaign's successful and the capacity of your organization grows, you will need to do more fundraising post campaign and then keep that person and integrate that person into your ongoing development operations. So I'd always prefer to see hiring internally than hiring a campaign consultant to play the role of implementer. Now, there are things to outsource. You might outsource some grant writing. You might outsource some event planning or some communications or writing. But in terms of, some of these internal things and donor relationships, those are things you don't want to outsource to consultants.
And you already went to the place where I was going to go next, which is annual fund and this idea of the comprehensive campaign. One of the
Mm,
objections internally a lot is, well, if we do a campaign, it's going to then undercut our annual fundraising, and we need our operational support. So I know you
yes.
kind of addressed it in the talk, but can you tackle that one again just to give people ammunition so when they go back to their office and say, I think we need a campaign, and someone says, well, yeah, but
Right.
how should they respond?
So any good campaign consultant worth their salt will focus also on the annual fund. And what we've found both in our research and our benchmark study and our, lived experience is that campaigns that are run well the annual fund stays steady and or grows during and after the campaign. And that's because a good campaign consultant will coach solicitors to talk to every single donor about the annual fund and the campaign. And sort of the standard language is we want you to give to support our ongoing programs and services as you've done in the past. Because our programs and services continue, and make a one-time special gift over and above that to the capital campaign. And so that the annual fund is not neglected. In fact, it either stays the same or it grows as it should. And so what we've found in our research is that only about 20% of organizations that are doing campaigns, the annual fund goes down. And to me, those are organizations that are neglecting their annual fund and not specifically communicating with donors that that's a priority.
Right. And if you don't mind, one more, this is more a kind of a technical question about the discussion on gifts and when they are earmarked. So you've got a capital campaign, you're not neglecting your annual fund.
Yeah.
But for the capital ask, let's say one is for, I don't know, for this building or wing of a building.
Okay.
What are your thoughts on building in the internal cost recovery or overhead or something like that? So a gift that is earmarked for a particular purpose, especially a building purpose, that it still doesn't undercut your ability to fund not just the campaign, but the organization.
Right. So you can have campaign policies that address that and how you're going to use some of those campaign funds. But truthfully, I think it's about being open and honest with donors and explaining what overhead costs mean and what operating costs function for. And most donors, once you explain it to them, will understand the importance of these things. So to me, it's about communication, open, honest transparency, and paying attention to what you're asking for and what the real needs of the organization are. And then you're gonna be totally fine.
And then maybe the last question, I always ask this of guests, which is if there's one thing that people take away, one thing that they can do now to prepare, what is that one thing?
I would say start learning, get curious. So there's tons of information. Good campaign consultants put all sorts of blog posts and podcasts and webinars. So start learning on your journey and rely on reputable sources to help you. Don't assume you can do it yourself or that you know everything or that you need to Google your way to a campaign. But rely on the experts that are out there to help you learn and grow and apply the right, real campaign strategy that will give you the best chances for success.
Right. And if they do that, they're obviously going to come and read some of the stuff that you've been sharing. So how can people learn more about you, your work, the firm, et cetera?
Well, thank you. Visit capitalcampaignpro.com. It's tons of free resources, podcasts, blog posts, webinars, and of course, the opportunity to work with us.
And you can always find out more, of course, about Amy Eisenstein herself, not only through that website, but also her posts on LinkedIn and other places. So check all that out. Thank you very much, Amy, for all of this today. Appreciate it.
Thanks,
and thank
Jay.
you. Thank you to all of you who are here with us live. And thanks to the people who are watching this recording later. We appreciate you very much. Make sure you fill out the survey if you are with us live as you leave. And do join us for some of our sessions next week. We'll look forward to seeing you then.
Bye-bye.
Bye.